it just me, or have German cars lost their spark lately? The cars they make now are overcomplicated. Yeah, another bloated, fake engine noise having twin turbo all-wheel drive hybrid that has 37 different sport modes, has an infotainment system designed by the enemies of progress. Overcompensating. Look at how they deliberately made the M2 badging larger than the 3.5. Mercedes has more cars than they know what to do with. And worst of all, underwhelming. So much for being futuristic. Almost had it. Have they forgotten what made us love them in the first place? I'm sorry. Why is an M car so quiet and isolated that you can't even tell if the engine is running without engine noises playing through the Harman Kardon audio system? This isn't about hating German cars. It's about loving them enough to want them to be better. I know that version of Germany that, like, yes. Is it just me, or have German cars lost their spark lately? While it's easy for nostalgia to cloud anyone's judgment, how could I not put on my rose-tinted glasses when German cars of the past weren't just benchmarks, they were deeply aspirational. With engines that kept you up at night, designs that made you stop and stare, and driving dynamics so addictive they justified the maintenance costs, German cars inspired awe. You can't tell me an M235 Grand Coupe is a worthy successor to the cars that made us fall in love with the Germans. And it's far from the only offender. Looking at the rest of their lineup today, I'm bummed out by how tired, uninspired, and gimmicky they've become. If the E46 M3, the V10 powered Audi S6, and W204 C63 AMG were alive to see this day, I'm sure they would be asking, where did it all go so wrong? Let's talk about Audi for a second. They're implementing this new naming structure where the odd number cars are combustion and even number cars are electric. I'm beginning to think this is a distraction from the reality of Audi having no new ideas on how to make their cars meaningfully better. At least the new A5 looks good. The Q4 e-tron, on the other hand, is practically a modern-day A2, down to its ungainly styling and rear drum brakes. So much for being futuristic. Apparently, Audi can't even keep up with the present by making a car with rear disc brakes and styling that doesn't look like the 1999 version of the future. Meanwhile, the TT and the RE are being discontinued with no signs of a successor. Bummer. I'm convinced BMW's only marketing strategy is rage bait. You guys think the Jaguar rebrand is bad? At least they had a good reason. No one was buying their cars. I want to know what BMW's excuse was for throwing away all their beautiful cars in favor of some odd-looking to genuinely heinous designs that I refuse to believe will age well. It's as if BMW's design brief is making intentionally outrageous designs because they know that gets them more publicity. At this point, BMW is doing anything for clout, to use an offsetism. Speaking of marketing, and to use a Jason Camisa-ism, that's what BMW M is beginning to stand for, marketing. BMW barely got away with putting an M badge on the 240i, 850i, and X5 50i, to name a few. However, look at the new M235 Grand Coupe. Look at how they've deliberately made the M2 badging larger than the 3.5. Alright, BMW, now you're dragging it. You're trying to tell us this is more M2 than M235? Man, if y'all don't get this reject of an export market Corolla looking car out my face.
You need to leave!
Meanwhile, at Mercedes, the new AMG C63 is a 4-cylinder hybrid sedan. Need I say more? I will. The new E-Class is nice, but far from revolutionary. I'd be shocked if non-car geeks couldn't tell it apart from the old model. Then again, when Mercedes tried to be revolutionary, we saw how that worked out for them with the EQ lineup. Let's just say their EQ phase was more W203 than W124. Then you have the AMG GT Coupe that would have been better off just being called an SL Coupe, as well as the AMG GT 4-door, which has more subversions of itself than it does substance. Hang on, they have this new Hey Mercedes feature, right? Hey Mercedes!
How can I help you?
It's probably not a good idea to make an $100,000 base version of a Halo car that's barely faster than an EcoBoost Mustang in the dragways. And that would be left for dead by a Volkswagen Golf.
Dang it.
That reminds me, I was recently watching a Throttle House video of a Mercedes-AMG GC63S E-Performance 4-door coupe 4MATIC Plus. And no, I'm not exaggerating, that's the actual name of the car. And for the first time, I couldn't even make it through the whole video. I just couldn't be bothered to watch a video of yet another bloated, fake engine noise having twin turbo all-wheel drive hybrid that has 37 different sport modes, slight exaggeration, and a stratospherically high price tag, yet it couldn't be an EV in the quarter mile if it had a full second head start. Mercedes has more cars than they know what to do with. And then they dropped the CLE Coupe. What is this, a CLK reboot? It didn't work back then and it's definitely not gonna work now. The theme of being more of the same continues at Porsche. The new Cayenne and Panamera are barely distinguishable from the predecessors when they've traditionally had major generational changes. The new generations are practically facelifts instead of redesigns. Even the new Macan EV hardly does anything the old Macan doesn't, and the old Macan was a decade old. It's just a Macan that happens to be electric and looks slightly newer. Then again, Porsche is basically in loyalist purgatory where even small innovations call for protest. We've seen the way people reacted when they replaced the ignition cylinder with the start button on the 992.2. That makes me feel bad for Porsche. I think Porsche is at their best when they do innovation. Just look at the 986 Boxster, original Cayenne, and the original Panamera. They were all crowning moments of excellence and innovation that were unfortunately met with backlash from pesky Porsche purists who can't get out of their own way. I want Porsche to be free and innovate for the better. They can start by replacing the 982 Boxster / Cayman already. Sure, the Boxster Spider RS is amazing, but those 4-cylinder base models, they gotta go. While they're at it, stop letting tradition get in the way of properly naming their EVs. Porsche, you don't need me to explain to you why calling your Taycan a Turbo S is ridiculous. Take that badge off. Looking at Volkswagen, they're about to shoot themselves in the foot by removing the manual transmission option from their Golf lineup. Great, yet another reason to buy a Mark 7 instead. The only thing the Mark 8 does better than the Mark 7, aside from having a trick differential on the Golf R, is being more expensive and more needlessly complicated to use. But hey, let's give credit where credit is due. At least Volkswagen is following the German tradition of making technology that makes you want to pull your hair out by reviving the spirit of the E65 7 Series original iDrive. Then you have the ID4. This electric crossover reminds me of what Hyundais used to look like back when Hyundais were only good for being cheaper than their competition. Now that that era is over, I can't think of a single reason why you would want an ID4 over an Ioniq 5. Say what you will about Hyundai, at least they're not putting drum brakes and boring styling on their 2025 crossovers. Don't get me wrong, sometimes the Germans prove to us that they can still make lust-worthy cars. The 911 GT3 RS and 911 ST are obvious examples, but that electric Mercedes G-Wagon is freaking awesome. Its quad electric motors, the ability to do 180s at will, its contemporary meets old school aesthetics. It's one clever name away from being a home run. But no, Mercedes just couldn't help themselves and call it the G580 with EQ technology. The Volkswagen ID Buzz is more proof the Germans can blend old school charm with new school innovation. It's a refreshingly quirky, bold and colorful design that was everything we hoped for. Until you remember that it cost a fortune, has an infotainment system designed by the enemies of progress, and has less range than a 10-year-old Tesla that has 200,000 miles on the odometer. They almost had it. The rest of the cars, however, most of them just seem like a cry for help. It's as if these brands ran out of ideas and don't know what to do anymore. Have they forgotten what made us love them in the first place? The cars had character, innovation, and effortless ambition. The cars they make now are overcomplicated, overcompensating, and worst of all, underwhelming. Complexity has always been a hallmark of German cars, especially luxury vehicles, but at least it's been meaningful in the past. It cost Mercedes more to develop the 5-link rear suspension on the W201 190e than it cost BMW to develop the entire E30 3 Series. Look at how well that worked out for Mercedes. So many other cars benefited from that multi-link setup Mercedes took the time to perfect. Audi's Quattro all-wheel drive system, released in the 80s, came at a time when four-wheel drive in anything other than a truck seemed ridiculous. Systems back then were clunky at best. They were manually actuated with limited steering capability. In contrast, Quattro was the first permanent all-wheel drive setup used in a production vehicle. Its variably locking center differential ensured that all four wheels received power while still allowing the front wheels to turn smoothly. Not only did all-wheel drive revolutionize motorsports, every manufacturer now offers an all-wheel drive passenger car. It's practically a market standard today. But now it seems the German obsession with meaningful engineering has crossed into diminishing returns. Take the new AMG C63. It's powered by a 2-liter 4-cylinder engine that's turbocharged to produce 469 horsepower. Then it packs a 6.1 kilowatt-hour lithium-ion battery, feeding an 150 kilowatt-hour permanent magnet electric motor at the rear axle. The engine is hooked up to a 9-speed automatic, to say nothing of the 2-speed transmission the electric motor is routed to. All this complexity combined to make up 671 horsepower at peak output, yet it's no faster than the BMW M3 competition or Tesla Model 3 performance. By the way, each of those cars has half the complexities of this hybrid, literally. When that C63 isn't in peak condition, it's just dragging around 1,000 pounds of batteries and electric motors, leaving it to rely on its 469 horsepower engine alone and barely being faster than the outgoing AMG C43. This is not progress. This is just a Toyota Prius with extra power, but with extra steps. You know, the same Prius that the Germans mocked 30 years ago. It's no secret how governmental regulations can prevent automakers from creating cars that appeal to enthusiasts. A decade ago, I would say the Germans did a pretty good job at preserving the car's character while still complying with federal regulations. Just about every German manufacturer has proven that small displacement turbocharged engines are a suitable replacement for their large displacement naturally aspirated predecessors, and fuel economy has improved significantly as a result. As much as we all miss the big naturally aspirated motors from AMG and BMW, for example, I think we can all agree that downsizing, turbocharging, and direct injecting was the right move for these cars. By the way, that M177 AMG 4-liter is an absolute monster. The B58 and S58, absolute masterclasses in engineering. I think we can also agree that a 4-cylinder Porsche 718 Cayman is one step too far when it comes to downsizing. And it was a preview of the eventual downsizing descent we are already starting to see with AMG. If you think that's sad, try wrapping your head around why synthetic engine noises playing through the stereo speakers are being so normalized. In the case of the F10 M5, the natural engine sound was so quiet that BMW engineers were constantly stalling manual transmission equipped models. I'm sorry, why is an M car so quiet and isolated that you can't even tell if the engine is running without engine noises playing through the Harman Kardon audio system? Need I remind you that M stands for motorsport? Worse yet, the once unapologetically innovative Germans are implementing synthetic engine noises in their electric cars as a means to cling to their past. Maybe if they sounded like a Ferrari V12, I would be okay with it. Too bad they sound like engine noises that wouldn't be out of place in Mario Kart Wii. Between that and numb electric power steering being one of many supplier-driven epidemics plaguing the German auto industry and robbing car enthusiasts of the experience they've come to expect, they're in a unique position where they have to artificially pipe in simulations of the experiences enthusiasts want. In the mission to make advanced luxury cars, they wind up with clunky tech more often than not. While ambient lighting, matrix headlights, and their digital displays are endearing enough, features like full-time voice recognition, a la Hey Mercedes or Hey BMW, or just the controls seem like pointless flexes of technology that are used once in the showroom and never again. Overall, the experience of these new cars come across as gimmicky and out of touch. One of my theories for the Germans' current position is hubris. German automakers seem to think they're the best based on how they present themselves in ads. At one point, they were the best. For decades, they led the industry alongside the Japanese. But in the last 10 years, Americans, Koreans, and even the Chinese have outpaced them. Western American brands like Tesla, Lucid, and Rivian are dominating innovation. Tesla wrote the EV playbook. Lucid is perfecting it, and Rivian is redefining luxury off-roaders. Even if EVs aren't your thing, GM is killing it with the enthusiast cars. The C8 Corvette range is hurting supercars' feelings, and we haven't even gotten to the ZR1 yet. The Cadillac Blackwing sedans, CT4V and CT5V, are beating the M3 and M5 at their own game. Still don't believe me? Tell me how the CT5V Blackwing put down a faster lap time at Big Willow than the BMW M5 CS. You know, the $140,000 limited edition track special. The Mustang lineup, that dark horse is staggering. And the GTD is on another level. Meanwhile, the Koreans have made everything appealing. A Hyundai Venue is interesting, a Genesis G90 feels world-class, and if an Elantra SE doesn't excite you, the Elantra N most certainly will. Just look at it and listen to it. Even the Chinese are making waves. For the first time, Americans are upset that we can't buy brands like BYD or Xiaomi. The German brands have traditionally been the innovators, so we may not have noticed that they've been chasing each other in circles for decades. Now that cars from elsewhere have taken the attention away from them, they've been slow to react, and usually it's not pretty by the time they do. Mercedes EQS is a perfect example. Rather than create an all-electric S-Class, they made a flagship that looks tacky. Its interior impresses visually, but the UX can't match the slickness of Tesla or Lucid. It's also somewhat impractical with no front trunk and the modestly reclined rear seats that make it feel cramped. This car screams Mercedes trying to fit in with the cool kids without actually understanding what made them cool in the first place, and sales figures reflect that. Compare that to Toyota, a brand quietly winning the enthusiast crowd with hot hatches, sports cars, and even a Prius that's legitimately cool. Meanwhile, BMW is still trying to peddle its Neue-Klasse concept that no one asked for. Honestly, what German car that's come out in the last 2 years that isn't a Porsche GT car has truly inspired you? None of this is to say modern German cars are bad. Most of them are objectively good. But is good really where they should settle? What happens to German cars being game changers? The Audi Q6 e-tron should wipe the floor of the likes of every other mid-sized EV crossovers that dare to compete with it. It doesn't. The Mercedes-Benz S-Class should be leaps and bounds ahead of the Genesis G90. It's better, but not by much. The Volkswagen ID Buzz should be the definitive electric people hauler, yet it costs as much as a Lucid Gravity, which is superior in nearly every way. The Porsche Macan EV should be the most thrilling EV crossover you can think of and buy, but I already forgot about it just looking at the Polestar 4. Are you seeing a pattern here? It's fine to not always be the best, but you have to at least try your best. And right now, I'm not convinced these brands are doing that. I've seen what German automakers are capable of. Mercedes gave family sedans the gift of sports car sex appeal with the CLS. The Audi TT RS shared DNA with the Volkswagen Atlas and still embarrassed Porsche Caymans on the track. The new Beetle didn't just save Volkswagen from bankruptcy, it became a pop culture icon. And the original Porsche Cayenne, a bizarre mashup of a sports car and Toyota 4Runner that somehow excelled at being both. That's the kind of bold innovation we used to get from Germany. And I need that version of Germany back, like, yesterday. This isn't about hating German cars. It's about loving them enough to want them to be better. I know what they're capable of, and I want to see them get back to their best.